We've got our family Funday service today, the Awada Variety Show here going on. It's acts of daring, like singing and playing an instrument at the same time, feats of strength, like trying to engage all ages in a service. Um, yeah, and we're going to have some activities. Aaron's going to give a short message, and then we've got, is it 2 activities today? Discussion group here in the back, and then an activity out there. And we are going to start with the song No Longer Slaves. I had an interesting thing at work happen this week. There's another guy at my work who's a Christian, and it's funny because like he introduced me to his wife on a Zoom call today or last week, and he said, "This is Nat, the other Christian at the company." So I work in video games, not a lot. But we started talking, things got off work, but he shared something that I thought was really interesting. He's been through a lot of hard things. He's been through the death of his first wife, and his other wife now has chronic health issues and stuff. But he said, you know, I I always thank God for when I come into trials. And he's like, it seems really counterintuitive because usually, something happens that's negative and you want to say why me. And he said, I keep a journal and I write down when I start thanking God for a trial in my life, a date. And he said, and then I write the next date I write is when I actually am thankful for that trial because I see what God's done with it. So that's a really interesting thing to do. And he said it's really produced gratefulness like in my life. So I'm kind of changing my mind. I'm trying to think about that, but I think that removes a lot of the fear too. And what the song talks about, when we fear the unknown, we fear what's going to happen. But if we're trusting God, even when those trials come, we can know that He's going to do something with it, and that He has our best interest at heart. So, anyways, I thought that was a cool moment from my week. You unravel me with a melody. You surround me with a song of deliverance from my enemies. Oh, till all my fears are gone. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. From my mother's womb, you have chosen me. Oh, love has called my name. I've been born again into your family. Oh, your blood flows through my veins. I'm no longer a slave to fear. Oh, I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and sing. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Oh, oh, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. No longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Draw me close to you. Never let me go. I lay it all down again to hear you say that I'm your friend. You are my desire. No one else will do. Cause nothing else could take your place. To feel the warmth of your embrace. Help me find the way. Bring me back to you. You're all I want. You're all I ever needed. You're all I want. Help me know you are near. Draw me close to you. Never let me go. Lay it all down again to hear you say that I'm your friend. You are my desire. No one else will do. Cause nothing else could take your place. To feel the warmth of your embrace. Help me find the way. Oh, bring me back to you. Oh, you're all I want. You're all I've ever needed. You're all I want. Help me know you are near. Help help me know you are near. Praise God. Oops. Boy, that song really touched me. That's really nasty of you, Nat. Uh, it embraces so much of declaring who God is, but in our human estate, we still come to that point of show me that you're near. You know, man, it's just the heart of God. As we rejoice in different ways as we come together to worship, I wanted to read Psalm 9. I will praise you, Lord, with all my heart. I will tell of all your wonderful deeds. I will be glad and rejoice in you. I will sing the praises of your name, O Most High. My enemies turn back. They stumble and perish before you, for you have upheld my right and my cause. Sitting enthroned as a righteous judge, you have rebuked the nations and destroyed the wicked. You have blotted out their name forever and ever. Endless ruin has overtaken my enemies. You have uprooted their cities. Even the memory of them has perished. But the Lord reigns forever. He has established his throne for judgment. He rules the world in righteousness and judges the people with equity. The Lord is a refuge for the oppressed, a stronghold in times of trouble. Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, have never forsaken those who seek you. Sing the praises of the Lord, enthroned in Zion. Proclaim among the nations what he has done. And that's just what we want to do. Today, we are not among the nations necessarily, but we want to practice praising God, even if he doesn't feel near all the time. I believe totally that when we gather in his name and we bring our voices together and cry out to God, he answers us. So I'm excited to be here today. I am excited all of you are here today. I have a few announcements I'd like to present to you. First of all, we like to put prayer first. Prayer first, not just here, but on Monday nights we gather, Zoom call, 7 o'clock. You probably see the meeting ID number up there with the passcode prayer with a capital P. I like that, prayer with a capital P. We also set aside one time a month where we like to meet here at the church in person for prayer, and that's going to be coming up June 19th, which is coming very soon. And speaking of June 19th, Juneteenth, I believe I'm putting you on the spot, but Lee, are you speaking at Esther Short Park June 17th? And could you tell us what that's for?
Well, it's the annual celebration that they do at Esther Park. They celebrate Juneteenth, and so they actually do the opening prayer for that, and they have a guest speaker as well as some activities happening there on June 17th.
What time?
I'm not sure the time yet.
Okay, you're going to find out for us, though. All right, because you got to be there. So you can let us know, too. Anyway, we like to do prayer together. We like to make it available to others who might not be able to come out at night with Zoom, but we also want to hear prayer requests. And if you have the cards in front of you or in the pew rack below the chairs, you can fill those out, or there's a card back there that is our connection card to put in your prayer request. And by the way, it doesn't have to be like a real needy thing. It could be a praise. Praise the Lord, oh my soul. Well, we can't do praises if we don't know the praises. So let us know about that. There's a number of resources, and we're calling that the Home Challenge, things you can do during the week to prepare your heart for the word that's coming and the things that we're studying. There's a bunch of things that you can access through Bible Project. I thought it was very interesting that the Thomas A. Kempis is one of the resources
I mentioned it last time I preached, a book, it's ancient, The Imitation of Christ. And I think Aaron looked that up as 1418. It's a classic that was and is and will continue. The Imitation of Christ, pretty awesome. Hind's feet on high places. Cheryl rushed up after the sermon that Debbie gave last week and said, everybody has to read Hind's Feet on High Places. It's another classic that is awesome, and it's an allegory, and it's something you can read with your children or as a family together, a chapter at a time or a couple pages at a time. It's pretty insightful for combining just what Nat was talking about actually a few minutes ago, how sorrow leads us to grace and glory, sorrow and pain. So God's really hammering that into us. We're going to hear about that more today. Um, anyway, you can look at the other things. The youth are meeting June 7th, Wednesday night, 6:30 to 8:30. Sunday, June 18th, they'll be having their own time during the service from 10 till noon. And we have some camps coming up. If you have someone who's a teen that wants to go to camp, take note of those camps. You can talk to Travis, Rachel, or Rebecca about those camps, and we can organize. I think there's been some talk of doing some fundraising for that. So let's pray for that. At any rate, I'm supposed to share a little bit about what I do besides get up and give announcements. I'm kind of the support for the teaching team and do some of the organization for that. And we have about 5 people now that have been in a rotation of preaching, speaking, teaching. We don't want to call it just preaching because we feel like teaching comes from the pulpit as well. Our Sunday teachings comes in different forms. And I wanted to open that up to all of you because one of the core values that we're developing more and more is that many voices are better than one. That we together are the body of Christ, and we express that in different ways, sometimes through song, worship leading, art. It could be poetry, a poem you've written to the Lord. But we want to integrate those things in our gatherings. And we believe that's the biblical model from 1 Corinthians, where it says everyone brings a song, a hymn, a spiritual song, a word, a teaching, a healing, a word of knowledge. But if you would like to participate in that, please connect with me. There's other leaders you could connect to also. But I've talked to some of you who have said, um, I think maybe I'd like to share sometime, or I'd like to preach sometime, but I'm not sure how to go about it. And there's several people in our congregation that can be available to help you in that process. How do you go about preparing? What do you want to study? How do you, illustrations, whatever. We want to be inclusive. And so I'm just putting it out there that we're going to be setting up our summer schedule on the 14th of June with topics and dates for speakers that will go through Labor Day. And so if you would like to be part of that, let me know or put it on a connection card with your prayer requests, put that down. We'll get that. And if you want to get together and talk about that a little more, that's great. By the way, I'm not talking to just people over 18, okay? There are many of you who love God, have a testimony, have a teaching, want to begin preaching. There's no age limit on that. So let's be open to that. The other thing I just want to mention is that one of the things that's happening is we're not streaming live. And what that does is it kind of removes a bit some of the people who are at home who are interacting with our congregation or want to. And I've had a couple instances in the last 2 weeks where people called and said, "What happened? You're not streaming." And I explained that you can watch it later, and they've said, "Well, it's just not the same." which is interesting. Now, I think there's good reasons we're not streaming live right now as we're going into summer and whatnot. But I also tend to be the person who makes connection for pastoral care. And what I want to put out there is that I know some people that would love to have some visits, and I know most of the people who come to Grace and Glory, and you may know some people that need some visits, but I just want to open it up that if you're interested in being part of that, to take some time to visit some people live and talk about what the sermon was about and pray with them or take communion or whatever they want or whatever you want, would you please let me know? And I would like to just kind of form what I would call something like a shepherd's staff, using that staff of the shepherd, meaning a core of people who really want to be the caring core as we reach out to shut-ins and people who really can't get to the service. So, at any rate, I want to have the ushers come forward for the offering. I think we've had plenty of announcements, and we're going to sing another song in a minute. And I just want to say that you might say that we're taking an offering, but I hate that word. We're not taking anything from anybody. We're receiving what people want to give, and I always call it a first fruits of all the blessings that God has given us. And for some people, that's a tenth, but you know, Jesus saw the woman who put in 2 pennies and said, she gave everything. And I believe what he meant is that no matter what we give, it's what's coming from our heart of saying, God, I give it all to you. Whether it's 2 cents or $1 million, God looks at the heart of the giver. And so this is a sacred time. And wherever, you know, you're at, whatever you're giving or not giving, let's put ourselves in the basket today. Let's give ourselves to God. Father God, we love you so much. And Lord, we're just reminded, I'm reminded, how you keep pouring out blessing after blessing after blessing, even in our suffering and our difficulties, Lord. And even in our dark nights, we can say, show me your face. I need you, Lord. And today we come saying, you've given so much to us, we want to give back, not just 2 cents, but we want to give ourselves to you today. And Lord, as we sing this song, we are giving ourselves to you, and we receive these gifts with your blessing. Multiply them to your glory. In Jesus' name, amen.
Lord, I come, I confess, bowing here, I find my rest. Without you, I fall apart. You're the one that guides my heart. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every hour I need you. My one defense, my righteousness. God, how I need you. Where sin runs deep, your grace is more. Where grace is found is where you are. Where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. And where you are, Lord, I am free. Holiness is Christ in me. Lord, I need you, oh, I need you. Every every hour I need you, my one defense, my righteousness. God, how I need you. So teach my song to rise to you when temptation comes my way. When I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Oh, Jesus, you're my hope and stay. And when I cannot stand, I'll fall on you. Jesus, you're my hope and stay. Lord, I need you. Oh, I need you. Every hour I need you, my one defense, my righteousness. God, how I need you. Oh, my one defense, my righteousness. God, how I need you.
Thank you, guys. Good morning. All right, well, kids, if you want to color, there are lots of clipboards and crayons in the back if anyone, or adults. Yeah, so raise your hand if you want them. I need to doodle to think. You guys, if you guys ever watch me, poor speakers, I'm always writing, and Nat's usually drawing pictures. So that's how we have to process information. So if you need to process that information that way, grab some crayons. So today we're going to start a new book. And I titled this sermon, Everything We Need, because of the beginning in the verses we're going to read today. It says, by his divine power, God has given us everything we need to live a godly life. And here is our plan for today. I'd like to let you guys know what we plan to doing. Okay, we're doing worship time? Check. We have done that. Announcements with Mark Johnson? Check. Did he do it in 5 minutes? I wasn't timing him. Okay. We're going to do a Bible Project overview of 2 Peter. Some of you may have seen it before, but maybe not. It's fast-paced, but it gives an overview of the whole book. And then I'm going to give my homily, and then we're going to go and do some activities, some really fun activities today with a discussion group. And then we're going to come back and do communion with Rich and Dana, and we'll have some more music at the end. So that is the plan for today. I'm going to jump in and do good old-fashioned exegesis. You guys know that word? It's a fun word to say. It makes you sound really smart. Exegesis. We're just going to go straight through the scriptures and talk about them as we go. So I'm going to start reading, and well, actually, no, I'm not. We're going to watch the Bible Project video first. So let's do that.
Second letter of Peter. It's addressed to the same network of churches as Peter's first letter, and it's likely written from the same location in Rome. Peter's become aware of the fact that he's going to die soon, and the evidence that we have from early tradition was that Peter was executed by the Roman authorities during the reign of Emperor Nero. And so this letter acts as Peter's farewell speech. He begins by offering a final challenge that Jesus' followers must be people who never stop growing. And then this is followed by two final warnings about a growing number of corrupt teachers who are leading Christians in these church communities astray. First, by their corrupt way of life, and second, by their distorted theology. Throughout the letter, Peter is countering accusations made by these teachers against himself and the other apostles. And Peter's goal is to restore confidence and order to these church communities. So Peter opens by reminding these churches that through Jesus, God has invited people to become a participant in his own divine nature. That is, to share in God's own eternal life and love, which is mind-blowing. And it requires a lifelong response. To receive this gift means a commitment to developing the same character traits that mark God's own divine nature. Peter lists here 7 traits to strive for. And the final one encompasses and crowns all of the others. It's love, which according to Jesus means devoting oneself to the well-being of others, no matter their response or the cost. To love, according to Peter, is to share in God's own life. Peter then states the letter's purpose. It's going to act as a memorial of his teaching that can be passed on to later generations because he's not going to be around to give it much longer in person. So before he dies, he wants to address these objections and accusations being made by the teachers who distort Jesus' teaching and that of the apostles. So Peter first addresses an accusation repeated by the skeptics present and future, namely that he and the apostles just made up all of this stuff about Jesus being risen from the dead and king of the world. Jesus isn't really going to come back one day. So Peter offers his eyewitness testimony of the powerful moment of Jesus' transformation on the mountain. Remember the story in Mark chapter 9. The apostles saw Jesus exalted as king, and his resurrection means that he's alive as king and will return to rescue our world one day. And so the future return of Jesus to bring God's kingdom, this will fulfill what all the ancient scriptures have been pointing to all along. The words of the Old Testament prophets, they're not fabricated fantasies. Rather, through these human words of scripture and through the human Jesus, God himself has spoken to us. Peter then moves on to address the threats raised by corrupt leaders in the church, and he focuses on more objections that they raise. So first, these teachers deny the idea of a final reckoning when God's going to hold all people accountable for their choices. And this denial is what conveniently allows the teachers to ignore Jesus' teaching about money and sex, because they're making tons of profit by teaching in the churches, not to mention the fact that they're sleeping around. But Peter reminds the readers that God can and will meet rebellion with his justice. He recalls 3 ancient examples when God did this. He first mentions the story about the sons of God in Genesis 6, as it was interpreted in a popular Jewish work of the time called First Enoch. First Enoch says the sons of God are rebellious angels who crossed the line and slept with women, earning God's judgment. Peter then brings up the story of the ancient flood and then the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In each case, there was a rebellion that led to divine judgment. But, Peter says, God was always faithful to deliver his people, and he uses the story of Lot to provide an example. Peter then connects these ancient stories to the teacher's corrupt way of life. They too are after money and sex, they despise God's authority, and they lead other people to think that God doesn't care about moral decisions. He says they teach a message of Christian freedom and use it as a license to do whatever they want. This is why Peter's going to bring up Paul's letters later on in chapter 3. It appears that these teachers have distorted Paul's message of liberation in Christ, but that's not the kind of freedom Paul meant. And Peter makes clear that these teachers are not really free. In reality, they're slaves to their bodily impulses. And the fact that they're Christians makes it even more tragic because knowing Jesus' teaching makes them doubly accountable. They have become pitiful examples of the ancient proverb about a dog returning to its vomit and a washed pig going back to the mud. Peter then addresses the reasoning behind the teacher's denial of the final reckoning. They say generations of God's people keep coming and passing away without seeing the fulfillment of their hopes. Where is this promised return of Jesus? Peter responds by showing how short-sighted this objection is. Look around, he says, at this remarkable universe that we inhabit. The fact that we exist at all means that at some moment in the past, God's word intervened in a dramatic way to bring something out of nothing and to bring order out of chaos, and he can do so again. And so the real question is, why is God taking so long? But Peter reminds us that our human conception of time is extremely limited. The long expanses of time through which God works don't fit neatly into the framework of our very short lives. These long amounts of time are actually a sign of God's patience, because each generation is offered the chance to recognize its own selfishness, to humble itself, and repent before God's generous grace. And God's grace will bring the story to a close on the day of the Lord. Here Peter draws upon the prophetic poetry of Isaiah and Zephaniah, who describe the day of God's justice as a consuming fire. Peter says, the heavens will pass away and the stoicheia will melt by fire. This is a Greek word that could refer to the elements, in which case it means the dissolution of the material universe, Or, more likely, it refers to heavenly bodies. In other words, the stars. That's what this word means in Isaiah chapter 34, where Peter is quoting from. And in that case, this line is a metaphor about the sky being peeled back, so to speak, before the God who sees all. And so this is why Peter says the day of the Lord will result in the earth and all its works being exposed. The ultimate purpose of God's consuming justice is not to scrap the material universe. Rather, it's to expose evil and injustice and remove it, so that a new kind of heavens and earth can emerge, one that is permeated with righteousness, full of God's love, and people who know and love God and love their neighbor as themselves. Peter concludes by saying, this is the true Christian hope that Jesus and all the apostles have been announcing, including Paul, whose writings can be misunderstood if you rip them out of context, but all the apostles are on the same page. And so Peter ends his final address to the church. Now, the tone of 2 Peter, it feels really intense, but his passion comes from a firm conviction that God loves this world and he's determined to rescue it through Jesus. And so this means that God's love must confront and deal with the sin and injustice that ruins his beloved world. And in God's own time, he will do so, opening up a new future for humanity and for the universe itself. And so Second Peter has a wide, expansive vision of hope for the whole world, and it challenges us to examine our everyday lives. That's what the second letter of Peter is all about.
Now it's working.
As a whole, very good. Who wrote it? Thank you. Who wrote it? Peter, and he identifies as a servant leader here. So we both identifies as a servant and an apostle of Jesus Christ. So apostle would put him in that leadership, but he is saying, I'm a servant leader, so I'm a servant to Christ. Peter draws extensively, also cross-reference for this from the teaching and themes found in the letter of Jude. So if you're going to read a second book alongside this one, Jude really draws a lot off of this. So when was this written? I won't quiz you on this bit, but this is the end of Peter's ministry, so it's like his farewell letter. And it was written, they think, roughly 60 years after Jesus' resurrection. At the time, for historical context, Emperor Nero was unleashing, he's the emperor of Rome, severe persecution against Christians in Rome, and the followers were often accused of all the problems and as a threat to the emperor. This placed it in a period when, so there's persecutions from outside, and also, we've talked about this before, persecution from inside. So you have the Jews pushing against us, and also Christians living a way that Peter is going to be correcting them for, but also outside persecution as well. Who is he writing to? Anyone? Who's he writing to? He actually tells us. He's writing to the church. He says, anyone who shares faith in the justice and fairness of Christ. Or Peter describes that it applies to all believers. That includes you. And he puts all believers on the same spiritual level. So it's not the quality or intensity of our faith, but the object of our faith that matters. And Jesus and his character is the object of our faith. But also, these letters specifically were distributed in northern Turkey. And we think from church history that Peter wrote it from Rome. So, same community as in First Peter. And then he has a greeting in the second verse, and he uses peace, which is the Jewish standard greeting, and the Greek standard greeting of grace. And the Gospel Coalition said something interesting about this that I thought was interesting. By pronouncing a blessing of grace and peace on his readers, Peter, like Paul, combined the standard Jewish greeting of peace and the Greek greeting of grace. Peter prays for grace and peace to come to them through the knowledge of God. This opening blessing to the later is later referred to with knowledge. So he connects it to knowledge in the beginning, and then way later in chapter 3:18, he uses that again, and it kind of forms brackets to context the letter. So he's talking about the knowledge we have in Christ throughout the entire letter. Peter wants his readers to grow in their relationship and knowledge of the Creator God and Jesus so they can reflect God's character more consistently and clearly in their lives. Okay. So, next verses. We have received all of this by coming to know him, the one who called us to himself by means of his marvelous glory and excellence. And because of his glory and excellence, he has given us great and precious promises. So, what is the source of our empowerment and provision? It says right here that it's God's divine power. It is through this power that God has graciously granted us everything we need for a godly life. This divine power is not distant or inaccessible. That's how it comes across in many other religions, this distant, hard to access thing. But instead, it's made available to us through the knowledge of the one. So, who is the one? Jesus. Yes, very good, Sunday school. Who is the one Jesus? He is, and it says right here in the scriptures that it's his marvelous glory. That is speaking of the fully divine and fully human nature of Jesus. He was like you and me, and he was like God, fully God and fully human. And he also Peter uses the word excellence here. So excellence could be interpreted a couple of ways. It could mean outstanding, extremely good. So I like to think of that as like the prototype for the new humanity. I've talked about that before, that Jesus was our example of how we are to live, how we are to be, and he showed us the way. But it's also the language of royalty, or the first of its kind. So Jesus was the first example for us on how we are to live. Let's keep going. Verse 4. These are the promises that enable you to share the divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. I'm going to read that again because this is incredible to me. These are the promises that enable you to share the divine nature and escape the world's corruption caused by human desires. Let's think about that. You have the divine nature in you from the power of the Holy Spirit. That's amazing. I think that's why the angels wonder. There's scriptures about the angels marveling at God's relationship with us. I think this is the reason why. That we, flesh and blood, you know, bag of bones, are infused with the divine nature. That's incredible. I don't think we access that power nearly enough. I don't think we even believe it fully. God is alive in you right now, and this happens in an instant. This is our birthright as humans, should we choose to accept it. And we have access to it through the Holy Spirit. And Jesus demonstrated this with his whole life and even by conquering death. So Peter reminds us that God's divine power has granted us everything we need for life and godliness. Let's say it a different way. Let's say it again. Through the power of Jesus, we have received precious and magnificent promises that enable us to partake in the divine nature and escape the corruption of the world. God's power is not distant or limited, it's empowering us now to live a life that is pleasing to God. But the call to growth in our faith is not a one time event. It is a lifelong journey, and that is a lot of what Peter is talking about in this letter. It sounds like opposites, right? You have access to it right now, and it takes a lifetime. So we call that dialectics. Learning big words today. Dialectics. Dialectics is when two seemingly opposing things are both true. So it's both true. It happens in an instant. We have access to God through our faith in Jesus in an instant, and it takes a lifetime. So Peter encourages us to continually mature in our knowledge of God and display God's love and character in our lives. We need to rely on God's divine power to make every effort to grow in the qualities we are about to read about. He's going to give us a beautiful list of what faith looks like lived out. Okay, this is my favorite part. In view of this, verse 5, make every effort to respond to God's promises. Supplement your faith with a generous provision of moral excellence, and moral excellence with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with patient endurance, and patient endurance with godliness, and godliness with brotherly love or family affection, or sometimes it says mutual affection, and mutual affection with love for everyone. What a call. Peter urges us to make every effort to add to our faith goodness, knowledge, self-control, perseverance, godliness, mutual affection, and love. As we spend our lifetime cultivating these virtues, they are going to shape our character, they're going to influence our relationships, and it's going to bring glory to God. And that's kind of the point. That's the whole point. And also, as these things work out in your life, there's tremendous joy that's cultivated as well. When we're walking with God, it is good. It's not that it's easy, but it's good. It's a good life. These are the building blocks of a life dedicated to Christ. And these qualities are not optional extras, they're essential characteristics of a life in Christ. Our faith should manifest in a transformed life that brings glory to God. So we must strive for growth in these areas. Why? These qualities or virtues help us to mature. They help us to get out of ourselves and become a better version, actually, of ourselves, the version that God intended us to be. And they are a result or a fruit or a product of a spirit-filled life. So if you're engaging with the Holy Spirit, these things are going to happen in your life as you're listening to God. And these are the characteristics of what I've mentioned before as the new humanity or the new Adam. I talked about this when I spoke on 1 Peter, which is to live God-filled lives. That's the intention that Jesus was bringing. He showed us how to live a God-filled life. And as we do that, we should look different, right? And Jesus exemplified this with his whole life. And a byproduct of that is that these qualities actually change the world. Our world, our communities, our countries, they are changed when we exhibit these qualities and live them out in our lives. Just ordinary people living and breathing examples of a God-filled life. And this is what it looks like. So I like how the Message puts it. Complementing your basic faith with good character, spiritual understanding, alert discipline, passionate patience, reverent wonder, warm friendliness, and generous love, each dimension fitting into and developing the other. Okay, verse 8. The more you grow like this, the more productive and useful you will be in your knowledge of the Lord Jesus Christ. So this is our calling. Peter completely demystifies God's will for your life. It's right there. You don't have to wonder. Live this way, the list he gave. So we're talking about the alert, discipline, passionate patience, spiritual understanding, reverent wonder, warm friendliness, generous love. Remain steadfast in the truth, seeking guidance from the Holy Spirit. And as we grow in that knowledge of Christ and use it, you will bring glory to God, and we become light and love to the world around us. So often before my kids go to school and when I'm praying for them, I say a phrase. Hero, do you know what it is? Judah? No? Yeah. Yeah. I say, be salt and light. Be tasty and illuminating. Be salt and light as you go into the world. I think that this is how Peter defines being productive and useful. Be illuminating to the world. Be something that makes it better, taste better as you go out. With our knowledge of God, this is what it means to be productive and useful. It's not enough to know it, we actually have to use it in our life. We can know it, and I think the people in Turkey they knew it, but they weren't changed by it and using it in their life. Another word that we could use here instead of productive and useful is agency. God has given you agency to grow in your faith, make a difference, and bear fruit that contributes to the kingdom of God right now. Okay, verse 9. But those who fail to develop in this way are short sighted or blind, forgetting that they have been cleansed from their old sins. So here, Peter's giving us a warning. We are susceptible to forget God, fall back in our old ways, forgetting that we are cleansed and able to walk with Christ right now. You can do it now, wherever you're at, even if people have fallen away, even those that maybe we're praying for that aren't walking with God right now. It only takes a second to turn to Christ and know you can walk with God now. You're free to live a risen life now, and you are forgiven now. Our old ways do not have to control us any longer. We do not have to walk in the way of harm towards ourselves or towards those around us. That way of harm, that's called sin. Sin is a way of harm that hurts ourselves and it hurts those around us as well. So, developing the qualities in Peter's list gives us the confidence that we belong to Christ. These disciplines develop our mind to be more like God's mind. Isn't that amazing? We're partaking in the divine. We're participating with God. We get to tap into God. That's phenomenal. Our salvation is not based on our works of achievement, but on the finished works of Jesus. And I want to emphasize that because a lot of this can sound like things we need to do. And I don't know how this all works together. I'm going to assume it is a dialectic when two things that seem opposing are both true. But our salvation in Jesus is secure. It has nothing to do with what we do. That's what we believe. And we have a work to do for our whole life as we serve God. And I've thought of it often as if I am loved and forgiven right now, exactly as I am, and God says that I have inherent worth and belonging, what is my response to that kind of love? And the only thing I could think of is, a life lived sharing and loving and developing that character of God in me. And so that's kind of how I fit the dialectic for my own mind. But it is tricky. Theologians talk about it to this day all the time. What is it works or is it a free gift? I'm going to say it's a dialectic. We are actively called, Peter's clearly actively calling us to live out our faith and grow in Christlikeness, and it looks like this. So, we are on to our last verse. Dear brothers and sisters, work hard to prove that you really are among those God has called and chosen. Do these things and you will never fall away. Then God will give you a grand entrance into the eternal kingdom of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. So, we have been reminded that God's divine power has given us everything we need for a life to live like Jesus. And here is the truth, it is actually work. It takes discipline and effort to live out a life for Christ. I've called it the new humanity because living this way is countercultural. Actually, it's culture changing. But it takes effort because you're going to be going against the grain of what happens when we're not following God. It's natural to have things come up in our life and selfishness and greed. And it actually takes discipline to work against that in our own life. The promise of the kingdom is of God is eternal. So what we build now, this is the promise. What we're building right now in ourselves and in our world, it will last forever. When Peter talks about the grand entrance into the eternal kingdom, I don't know if it's the same concept of heaven that we've been told where there's like, floaty babies and flapping wings and we're on clouds. I don't think it's like that, but I think it's more of a promise that the kingdom of God is eternal. As believers, we're not left on our own to navigate the challenges and temptations of the world. We've been handed a legacy that is building on that kingdom. And God has graciously provided us with the divine power inside of us and resources through Jesus Christ. So you're not powerless. Rather, we have the privilege to tap into this unlimited, eternal resource of the kingdom of God. And this is a tricky, hard one. We can fall away. Our lack of discipline can actually derail a life of love. Well, I have no idea if this affects eternal salvation. I'm not going to get into that. I don't know. I can see that if we sink into our own selfishness and vices, easily if we're not focused on the way of Jesus. And these are the way of Jesus. This has been in my own life. When they talk about testimonies, I thought when I was creating my testimony, it had to look like this. My life was really hard, and then I met Jesus, and then my life has been great. But guess what? I met Jesus when I was 5. I didn't have time to have, a rough life. It wasn't. It was not a rough life. I was not like, oh my gosh, I was such a sinner when I was 4. And now I'm saved. No, it's been like this, like, and I have years that I have not been tapped into these disciplines and listening to the Holy Spirit. When I do fall away, I do. I really sincerely hope that has nothing to do with my eternal salvation. I don't think it does. But it absolutely has to do with my life here and how I affect those around me and how I affect myself and how I die inside when I'm not tapped into these disciplines. This is a gift to us. This is not work. It is work, but it's a work for our good, like exercise, which is also hard to do. um, I got derailed. Oh, yeah. Okay. Finally, the everything matters zone. Sorry, hero. So life is not easy, and I have gone through periods of depression and despair in my own life. And during one of these times, I was crying and not telling my family why I was crying. And Nat was trying to comfort me and asking me why. And I think I said something like really pathetic through the tears, like, it doesn't matter. And I was actually like really in this place of despair because, I have had times when I was doing things and working really hard, and then you have things you don't see it. You don't see it working. And I was in a space where I could not see it. And I was like, it just doesn't matter. It does not matter. Why does any of this matter? This difference and this effort. I didn't think my kids could hear me, but they were listening as always. And Hero was about 6 years old, and he came into the room with a sign and the tape, and he taped it right where I could see it. And it said, the Everything Matters Zone. And I think, and then this little 6-year-old tried to school me on why what I was doing mattered. It was a gift. But I think that's what Peter's reminding us of here, that we are in the everything matters zone, and we might not see all of it all the time, but we're in this space where what we're doing is eternal and is good, and we're keeping ourselves on this path because it matters. And he's given us everything we need to live this life of love in Jesus. And that is 2 Peter 1, 1 through 11. So we are going to go do some activities that are building on this with our families today. Could Victoria come up and explain the activity?
So if you haven't seen out on the table, there's a ton of tools and activities and things, and you'll probably get there and have no idea what to do. So what we're doing is we're gonna do some metal stamping. And Aaron and I, Friday night, 8 p.m., we're sitting down for dinner. We're like, what are we supposed to do on Sunday? We don't know. And we pulled up the verse, and it was like I like just started reading, and within a second hit verse 5, and I was like, oh, these look important. And so it came up to all those 7 words that are those ways to be in the way to follow and everything like that. So those words kind of like stood out immediately. And so in my brain, it instantly was like, we need to be reminded of these. And there's a way to be reminded. And I was like, what if we had it on spoons or knives or those types of utensils? You can put it in your garden. You can, if you're like Jake and I and you have nothing that matches in your silverware drawer, you can magically pull out a knife or a spoon and be reminded on that in that moment. For our 18 and younger crowd, you probably don't care about knives, spoons, or forks. So there are metal, plastic, aluminum, plastic pieces that you can turn into bracelets. So you can wear it with you. And then after our 18 and lower crowd makes their bracelet, if there's any adult who would like to use leftovers, you may. And there's this nifty thing right here, which then turns that piece of metal into a bracelet. What we have out there are stamping sets that are in here. It has all of the letters. And there is a plethora of hammers out there of all various sizes. And spoons, forks, knives. I tried to find the most interesting ones I could at Goodwill. I would wash them before you use them. And then weights from our garage. And this is where you're going to put that piece of metal on, whatever you're stamping. If you come across a lot of the silverware might be stainless steel, and it might take a hit or two just to make it deep enough. But if you're doing it on the aluminum bracelets, it'll only take about 1 hit. Make sure you give it enough impact to make it there, but it should be good. After you're done with whatever word you choose, whether it's from this or one that you connect with more, you can go over it with Sharpie and let that dry, and then we can wipe it away with hand sanitizer, just that alcohol base, so that word really pops up to remind you. Any questions with that? Hopefully I explained it well enough. Okay. Yes.
You put them on the spoon and then you hammer it down.
Yes, I couldn't do it with one hand. Yeah.
Here, let me hold this.
Yes.
Here.
So, my voice is loud enough. I'm a loud person. So you can put it on the spoon itself, or fork, whatever is knife, whatever's out there, or on here if there's plenty of like empty space. It's up to you. It's your craft. You'll put it on the weight that Jake is so graciously allowing us to use. And then as you get it where you want it to, you just give it a tap. Yeah, it's just a tap. And it will imprint. Not on this one because it wasn't angled right, but that's it.
Okay. So we're going to split into 2 groups. Kind of, if we can, I trust you to split yourselves. Half of you go outside, the other out to the hallway. Maybe split the kids sort of evenly, and then the rest are going to be in this discussion group back here. There's lots of coloring as well for kids down there. So let's go ahead and do it, and we'll switch halfway through in about 20 minutes.